The U.S. president brought words of encouragement and offers of investment on his visit to Northern Ireland to mark the 25th anniversary of the region's Good Friday Peace Agreement. After an informal meeting with the British Prime Minister, Joe Biden expressed support for the UK's compromise deal with the EU on Northern Ireland's trade arrangements. Biden said it could bring transatlantic economic benefits.
Your history is our history, but even more important, your future is America's future. Today's Belfast is a beating heart of Northern Ireland and is poised to drive unprecedented economic opportunity and investment in communities across the UK, across Ireland, and across the United States. The simple truth is that peace and economic opportunity go together.
But Biden's words may not move hardline unionists opposed to the deal, which they say gives the EU authority over Northern Ireland. They continue to boycott Northern Ireland's power-sharing government over the issue. Before Biden spoke, they signaled their position would not be changed by his intervention.
They helped us to reduce the tension with Turkey. They helped us with Afghanistan to save activists, children, women. They helped us.
And we have fought for these decades. I think we still fight to make sure we have a Europe that is always more democratic.
Enthaltungen angenommen.
Plus là, plus là, plus là.
Bonjour à toutes et à tous, je sais que vous faites votre travail. Je suis venu expliquer.
Ερντογάν να καλύψει ένα κενό που άφησε η απουσία της Αμερικής και το βραχικυκλωμένο πλέον ΝΑΤΟ υπέρ μιας ειρηνικής συνύπαρξης με την Ευρωπαϊκή Ένωση. Εδώ υπογραμμίζω...
De maintenir quelqu'un parce qu'elle est connue, parce qu'elle est vice-présidente.
The UN Human Rights Mission in Ukraine says it is horrified by a video allegedly showing a Russian soldier beheading a Ukrainian prisoner. While the sensitive images have yet to be verified, Brussels says it will hold war criminals in Ukraine to account. Back in Kyiv, President Zelensky has also called for action.
Є те, що нікому у світі неможливо ігнорувати. Як легко ці звірі вбивають. Це відео страти українського полоненого. Світ повинен бачити. Це відео Росії, якою вона є.
His foreign minister Dmytro Kuleba has also decried the alleged killing on Twitter, maintaining it is, quote, absurd that Russia is presiding over the UN Security Council. Meanwhile, Ukraine's ombudsman will request the organisation's Human Rights Committee to investigate the video. The footage was 1 minute and 40 seconds in length and has been circulating since Tuesday. The Kremlin has requested the video's authenticity be verified, but acknowledged that they were, quote, horrific images.
Over recent weeks, Russia has continued to develop extensive linear defences in Zaporizhzhia region in the south of Ukraine, says the UK Defence Ministry, adding that Russia has now completed 3 layers of defensive zones across approximately 120 kilometers of this sector. These consist of a front line of forward combat positions and then 2 zones of nearly continuous, more elaborate defences. Each zone is approximately 10 to 20 kilometers behind the one in front. The US-based Institute for the Study of War says Russian forces constructed additional fortifications around Vasilievka in Zaporizhzhia region. Ukrainian authorities add that Russian forces are intensively equipping and mining defensive positions in this direction out of fear of a Ukrainian counteroffensive. According to the UK Defence Ministry, Russia has probably put significant effort into these defensive works because it is convinced Ukraine is considering an assault towards the city of Melitopol. The Zaporizhzhia region sits between Kherson and Donetsk, and the Institute for the Study of War experts say if Kyiv wants to take back Zaporizhzhia region to then pinch Russian forces out of Kherson, push its troops northeast through Donetsk and make headway for Crimea, Ukraine could focus on targeting this triangle between Melitopol, Tokmak and Vasilivka. According to the UK Defence Ministry, Russia's newly developed defences have the potential to be formidable obstacles, but their utility almost entirely depends on them being supported by sufficient artillery and personnel. It remains unclear if the Russian forces can currently muster those resources. Also, Ukraine does have a unique advantage in this area. It is the #1 site for civilian resistance groups in all over Ukraine.
The European path advocated by the French president regarding Taiwan raised controversy. Emmanuel Macron calls on the Union not to show followership towards the United States or China on this issue. For some, these remarks made after his trip to Beijing are dangerous because they could crack European unity and transatlantic solidarity when it comes to Beijing. However, not all observers denounce the strategic autonomy defended by Paris.
President Macron has, for several years now, repeatedly emphasized his view that Europe should develop what he calls strategic autonomy. And I think depending on what you want to see in that concept, different people see different things. For my own part, I don't see that as a threat to to transatlantic unity at all. I think that there's plenty of people in the United States who would support the idea that Europe should do more to be a strategic actor in its own right, and Europe stepping up to do more, especially in light of the threats, both proximate and global in today's era, would be a good thing.
Dan Baer also points out that certain elements of the analysis presented by the Commission President resonate in Washington. For example, Ursula von der Leyen spoke of the need to preserve the status quo in the Taiwan Strait. However, just after the visit of the European leaders, Beijing conducted a military exercise to encircle the island. In this context, the idea of a European third way seems very difficult because the security of the Union depends on the United States.
We should follow the US as far as in our interests, but it's obvious that our values and our interests are not the same of the US, but are closer to the US than to China. So I don't think that we should just blindly follow the US, but talking about neutrality or equidistance here, I think is not very realistic because neither our values or our interests are equidistant from Washington and Beijing.
For the EU, the priority remains to keep the channels open with Beijing. The head of European diplomacy was supposed to go to China this week, but his trip has been cancelled due to COVID-19.
US security services say they will turn over every rock until they identify who's behind the leak of classified Pentagon documents. US Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin said he's aware of at least 2 series of leaks, but warned there might be further documents still to come.
I've been convening senior department leaders daily on our response, and I've directed an urgent cross-department effort. And we've referred the matter to the Department of Justice, which has opened a criminal investigation. Now, I can't say much more while the Justice Department's investigation is ongoing, but we take this very seriously, and we will continue to work closely with our outstanding allies and partners, and nothing will ever stop us from keeping America secure.
The Pentagon says it's reducing the number of people who have access to briefings and closely monitoring where the leaked documents are being posted and amplified. US officials say some of the documents may have been altered or used as part of a misinformation campaign.
We can do that. That'd be awesome.
January to March was the deadliest first quarter since 2017 for migrants crossing the Mediterranean. In just the first 3 months of 2023, at least 441 people died, crossing what has been described as the most dangerous maritime route in the world. Around half of those deaths, according to the UN, are because of delays in state-run rescue efforts and obstacles to NGO search and rescue attempts. But the International Organization for Migration argues that their figure is most likely an undercount because of so-called invisible shipwrecks, or cases where accidents are only known because the boats have been reported missing. At least 20,000 people have died trying to cross the body of water since 2014. Italy declared a state of emergency on Tuesday because of a high number of people arriving by sea, with more than 31,000 migrants arriving in the country since the beginning of 2023, a figure that is 4 times higher than the same period last year.
Global action to halt climate change is falling behind the United Nations targets, but researchers believe that 2022 may have been an important turning point. Ember, an independent energy think tank, says carbon emissions might have peaked last year. It has analysed electricity use from 78 countries, representing 93% of global electricity demands. Data shows that the decarbonisation of the power sector is underway, while a record growth in wind and solar slashed electricity emissions to the world's lowest ever level. Electricity from nuclear or renewable sources make up 39% of global needs, also a new record. Hydro and nuclear are still the world's largest sources for non-fossil fuel-powered electricity. Russia's invasion of Ukraine pushed many governments to rethink their hydrocarbon inputs. Researchers say a new era of declining power sector emissions is close, but they also say urgent work is needed to ensure wind and solar can be integrated to the grid. Apart from Africa and the Middle East, these energy sources are rising at a steady pace all over the world. 3 of the world's top 5 wind and solar generators are in Asia: China, Japan and India. Ember says this Chinese-led initiative could be crucial in meeting the targets set to stop global warming.